this process like started from a place of frustration.
Yeah,
I was
totally.
pissed off.
Yeah.
I still kind of am pissed off.
Yeah.
And some of it's a little bit self-fulfilling. But I have a lot of issues with this industry, but I also recognize that it's a system issue more than it is necessarily an individual agent issue.
Hi there, I'm Jess Uphoff, and this is this week's episode of This Just In. I have my step-in co-host today. My normal co-host, Elise, is out, and my step-in co-host, my business partner, Lauryn Dempsey, is with me today. And we are so excited for the guest that I have persistently pursued to have on the show. I'm here with Mike Chambers. Some of you might know him. Mike has an Instagram handle that's called Realtors Hate Me. He runs a company called Ridley, an industry disruptor. Mike, we're so excited to talk to you today. Should realtors hate you?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's up for discussion. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here, and I appreciate your persistence on getting me on the show.
Yeah, appreciate you being here. So you're shaking things up a little bit, right?
Trying to. Yeah. It's been an interesting journey. I think, as we were talking about at the beginning, had zero intention of getting involved in this industry whatsoever. Have a background in the nonprofit space, have also a background in tech, and really stumbled upon this opportunity very organically. I know that hasn't been the narrative in the industry, but in truth, we were looking to sell our house here in Boulder, Colorado. We've been spending a lot of time down in Nosara, Costa Rica, and we lived down there for about 8 months last year, and really liked the opportunities for my kids down there. And we were considering, moving down there for a few years while our kids are still young, and that prompted me to want to potentially sell our house here. And honestly, the way this went, just to set the record, interviewed a bunch of agents, and I live in a neighborhood in Boulder where, you can put a yard sign out and you've got an offer by 5 p.m. I've got a recently updated home, and interviewed a bunch of agents to sort of find an agent who was willing to list my house for what I thought was a fair price. And I couldn't find an agent in town that was willing to list my house for what would equate to, less than what would equate to around $70,000 in commissions. I was like, this is crazy. I was just going to do it myself. And I didn't really get frustrated until I tried to get my house on the MLS. And I actually went on one of these like entry-only platforms. It's called Owner's Entry. They were considered the best entry-only platform in Colorado. Well, it turns out there's no such thing as entry-only in Colorado. I spent 30 minutes filling out this whole thing, trying to figure out where to get all this information, and got an email the next day from the owner saying, oh, sorry, like Colorado doesn't allow for entry only. They've got what's called a minimum service law, and that requires agents to perform a minimum set of services in order to get you on the MLS. And at that point, I was really frustrated. I felt like this industry was sort of forcing me into this system that wasn't necessarily set up in my best interest. Now, I have a history of viral marketing like that. I've done it for several brands over the years, and I knew that there was an opportunity to like speak about this story in a way that was going to, one, highlight my experience and sort of educate consumers around it, but also just like highlight the ways in which I'd argue this industry is failing consumers. And created the video at 9:30. My wife came out in the kitchen. She's like, what the hell are you doing? Do not do that. Posted the video. My wife was like, take it down. Went to sleep and woke up, and it had gone viral. And from that point on, every single day, it was sort of sharing my experience. And I had a very unique experience. Like when I look back on this, I think my experience with the industry obviously was intensified by the fact that, I was sharing all of these things publicly, and I sort of attracted some of these, I would call, bad behaviors. I'll take that. But there was a lot of other things that we sort of uncovered along the way, things with like rules in the industry that prevent for sale by owner sellings from being listed alongside agent represented listings and on Zillow and other platforms, the no commingling rule, like all these other things. And So anyhow, going through this whole process, I was using all of these different platforms to educate myself on this. I was using ChatGPT a lot. I was using Zillow. I was going on government websites. I was, doing everything I could to book vendors, all this stuff. And it was sort of crazy to me that there wasn't a product in this sort of technology enabled era that would guide consumers through this process, and help them understand what things meant and made it really easy for them to navigate. And so I decided to build it.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I think one thing we share in common with you is the consumer first. Like, it's about the consumer. We're very agent friendly, but I also think there's a lot of agents out there that don't deserve to make the money that they're, trying to always make. So I think it's interesting to disrupt it and to shake it up a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'm just kind of curious, like what have you learned, right? And so we've been on the website, we've looked, and
Yeah.
I know we've watched your social media and everything. You've built something pretty quickly, but I'm sure that it wasn't built without growing pains, right? You're running up against
Oh my God,
an
it's
industry
crazy.
that's been how
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
But I also say, like, there's the industry, but then there's also the law piece of it too.
Totally.
And so kind of trying to figure out how are you being able to put these homes up and not violating just real estate law and brokerage
Totally.
services and everything like that. I think there's the industry, right? But then there's the law,
Totally.
right? And so there's two separate things. And I think a lot of the attention gets focused on the bad behavior within the industry, but we're also butting up against just legal requirements too.
Totally. I mean, well, let me take a step back and say that, like, it's one of the biggest learnings is that I believe this system of buying and selling homes is failing every stakeholder. Like, it is failing consumers and it is also failing agents.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, coming into this was, like, I didn't truly appreciate everything that real estate agents were dealing with in this process. Insanely high lead fees, insanely high brokerage splits. Like, it is a cutthroat industry, and it's represented in the fact that, over 70% of agents don't sell a single home. And there's like 1.5 million realtors, I think, somewhere in that. So I've learned a lot about that. I've also learned that it is incredibly complex in terms of the regulatory nuances, there's hundreds of MLSs. There's like something like 500 plus MLSs, and there's forms, and there's yard sign rules, and there's all of these things. It's insane. So, first, because we had such a big target on our back, given the nature of the way this all came to be, we were really thoughtful in making sure that we engaged, really good legal counsel throughout this process to make sure that, we were doing things thoughtfully and by the law. We also incorporated a brokerage. So we've got a wholly owned subsidiary brokerage. All of our brokerage activity is performed within the brokerage. And in terms of, like, the product and execution, I think some of the big things are, we are not telling you what to do. Our product is not designed to say, you should price your house this way, or, you need to negotiate in this way. Like, the product is designed to help you understand what things are, what things mean, to give you access to data that's historically been gatekept, to just basically help you understand as a consumer what you need to do and what you need to know as you're going through this process. And simultaneously, we give you the backstop of expert support throughout the process. So all of our sellers, and we're focused on the sell side of the equation, have the ability to call on licensed attorney at any point. So if they get a contract, they will call on an attorney to do a review if they want, or what we're calling Ridley preferred agents, which are agents that are sort of trained on our process, and they can step in to help with things like, tricky pricing scenarios. They can step in to help with negotiation, contract to close guidance, like all of the things that may come up throughout the process where, you want a backstop. And I kind of call it our oh shit button, right? Like, it's, you're going through this, you feel confident that you can navigate it, and then something comes up and you feel like you want some additional support, and we sort of, we give you access to it. So the way I think about this is, like, the technology is evolving incredibly quickly, and we are in the first inning. Like, do I think that technology will be able to replace every aspect of the agent? No. I do think we're going to see a shift from the agent at the center of the transaction to platforms like Ridley at the center of the transaction, with agents moving into these sort of supporting roles. And I don't think that's necessarily true for everyone, right? Like there's sort of a bell curve here, right? You've got, you know, you think of like first time home buyers who really benefit from agent support and like understanding what they should be looking out for. And like they need an emotional thought partner throughout this process. And then you've got super high end luxury who don't want to deal with anything. And they're like, yeah, great. And then you have this like kind of mass in the middle. And the sellers that are most interested in what we're offering are people who've sold a home before. They're like loosely familiar with the process. They're, educated. They sort of feel confident in their ability to make good decisions on their behalf. Interestingly, and this was like really surprising for me coming into this, the biggest demographic of users on Ridley right now are downsizers. So these are folks that are slightly older than you would, think, 50 to 60. They are looking to sell their, forever home or whatever you want to call it and move into the later stage of their life. And they want to retain as much equity as possible. They're not the most like tech savvy. They're not the like young kids who are like trying to, stick it to the man. They're just mindful of the fact that like they've done this. They've had a career. They understand how things work. And, they don't feel that the sort of service that they're receiving is reflected in the cost from a traditional real estate agent. And you'd be surprised, like the average home price on Ridley is $1.2 million. We have over 250 million in listings. We launched on July 15th. It's been about 10 weeks. These are not your traditional for sale by owner sellers. And we're also not after the traditional for sale by owner market. We're sort of, we're after the market. We're trying to create a solution that, works for a segment of this, of this market of home buyers and of home sellers initially and eventually home buyers. To just empower them with the information and the tools that they need to be successful and help retain, their equity.
I think a couple of questions I have, just are you primarily in Colorado? I know we've talked here nationwide. Obviously, the Colorado market has shifted and there's a lot more inventory. So kind of targeting the sellers is a much more difficult conversation to move that inventory as a result of just less buyers being active on the market. So I'm just kind of curious, how long are these homes sitting on the market? I also couldn't find them on your website. Like I wasn't sure if there's a place where you can just see all of Ridley's listings as well. I know some of them are in the MLS, some of them probably sold off market, that type of thing too.
Yep. So I'll take it from the top. So we launched in Colorado on July 15th. We have so we basically have two packages right now. We've got your Ridley Essentials, which is like your do-it-yourself experience using the platform. That's $1,000. And then we have what we're calling our Ridley Pro tier only here in Colorado, which there's two different payment options. I believe it's $3,000 one-time fee and you get agent support for these high stakes moments, but you're still sort of in the driver's seat. And then we have a deferred payment model as well for that. We have our Essentials plan, that base tier, also available in roughly 13 other states. The one barrier to launching that nationally is well, there are a handful of barriers from a regulatory standpoint, but primarily lining up the right partners for MLS distribution. Colorado, we arguably chose one of the harder states to launch a platform like this, which is why historically these companies have started in, more for sale by owner friendly states where they have entry only. We don't currently have a buyer browse experience. We will. In fact, we'll have that within the next couple weeks. We do have on the website some featured homes, but we will have a full buyer browse experience within probably 2 weeks. We also have some really interesting like things that we're going to be doing on the buyer browse experience that are really novel in the market. Like I can kind of give you a little bit of a sneak peek, but we've developed a model that we're calling like a Ridley readiness score, which effectively we're taking a bunch of different data and we can predict, or we are attempting to predict, which homes are most likely to come on the market within the next 30, 60, 90 days based on a bunch of different data points, with the intention of giving buyers the ability to get in front of them before they come on the market and potentially transact off market, allowing them to call on a lawyer or one of our agents to be able to facilitate the transaction. So anyhow, we have a bunch of like interesting things that we're trying to do on that front. Our average list to sale price ratio in Colorado is, I believe, 98% right now, which is directly, I think, on par with what it is in Colorado. And our days on market is I don't know the exact number, but the last we discussed this, we were outperforming agent represented listings. There are a few outliers. I think one of the biggest issues with what I've seen so far is we have to give the consumer as much information as we can to help them price their home accurately. And you know this as an agent, like
it's hard right now.
Trying to tell someone that their house is worth less is like really hard.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We can't do that as a technology platform.
But the agents can.
The agents can. Right.
And that's kind of just like, I'm just kind of curious, the agent demographic, right? And so when we see these types of companies come together, there's the agents who have too much business and they're doing really well. They're not going to dabble in these types of situations. So I'm more kind of curious, like, what is the quality of the agent, the experience level, and everything like that too. And I think one of them is a big FSBO agent here that does the MLS entry.
Yeah, we had worked with, so, I didn't really understand how difficult like a lot of these aspects were going to be. We needed to stand this up quickly. We, had this traction. We needed I had sort of a vision for how this thing could all play out. And so we, partnered with some agents early on just in the name of getting this thing together. Since then, we've sort of developed our own process,
Preferred,
right?
okay.
So we've got our own, and Ridley preferred agents, basically, they're trained on our system. They get access to Ridley sellers. Eventually, they're going to get access to this same toolkit that we're building to enable sellers to navigate this process as well, to help them run their businesses more efficiently. Like, it's crazy to me that agents are still paying these insane splits to brokerages to like access this like shitty CRM, and and they have to hang their license, of course, but like, the value of a lot of these brokerages has really declined over the years. You're actually, I was with a very well-known leading industry analyst the other day, and like we were looking at data, like the percentage of brokerages is decreasing quite substantially right now. Obviously, there's a bunch of roll-ups and things that are happening. But yeah, I mean, I think like if we're honest about our mission here, which like my mission is, I want to save consumers billions of dollars in unnecessary fees in this, and I want to make homeownership more affordable, like attainable for people. And if we're really honest about carrying that mission out, we have to look at the upstream inefficiencies that are sort of driving up costs. And, when we talk about agents, like we've talked about all of these inefficiencies in the system. So like, I do want to extend a lot of these products and a lot of these tools that we're offering for, for sellers over to agents. So right now, agents, they don't have access to the platform because we just haven't built it yet. We're very early, but they get access to the leads. The profile of an agent, it sort of ranges. So the way we've structured this is like, I think it's like a minimum of 5 years experience. And then I think we have someone as much as like 10 years experience. So it's sort of in the range. We see a lot of people who were once very active agents who are just looking for, some additional work. But the experience for a Ridley preferred agent is to use their expertise to help someone with a specific task. Like they're helping someone with figuring out a pricing scenario. They're going through different things. They're looking at stuff. They're reviewing the data that we've provided, or helping them with, negotiation, helping them understand what things mean. I mean, when I was considering launching Ridley, like I did this huge survey of all these people. And one of the most common fears of going about this process on their own was that they didn't understand the paperwork, right? Like the paperwork is daunting for people. It's one of the most consequential financial decisions that any of us will ever make. So they'll, do things like that. But for them, the average Ridley agent spending around 3 hours per transaction. And they're, right now making around, I think like $1,500 to $2,000 for that. So it's pretty lucrative. And if you can think of this at scale, you can imagine a world in the future where like you've become an expert in pricing and negotiation, and you can literally sit at your desk for 8 hours a day and have these conversations and make more money than you've ever made, potentially, sort of out there grinding, driving people around for 6 hours, hosting open houses, doing all these things.
I mean, I think Jess and I are very much aligned. We've had these types of conversations as well. Like there's frustrations from the agent perspective too, is that we are put into this box. This is how we have to do the business. Big brokerages charging agents 6 figures just to be a part of it and not getting enough value, and their life isn't any better. So I think there's a lot of agreement there. The challenge is breaking the way of doing business too, because I was telling Jess, I've had so many seller conversations this year, and they haven't necessarily turned into listings because of the market conditions. And so hours and hours of my time that I haven't been compensated for, but I've given really amazing advice and prevented heartache on the other side for them as a result. And so the question is, how do I get paid for that as an agent? But the current model and the current system doesn't support me as an agent to go say, yes, I'm happy to talk to you, but I'm going to bill you like lawyer bills. And I can't, I could do it. It's difficult.
I believe, I have always felt that the agents should be compensated for their time regardless of whether or not a house sells. I actually think that is more reflective of how society operates.
Do you think consumers would pay for that? I think that's the question.
Well, it's a good question. And I think the devil is in the details, right? Should I be paying you $500 an hour to drive people around? Should I be paying you $500 an hour to be negotiating? I guess the question is are all the tasks associated with this process weighted equally? And so I think it gets very challenging to come up with a random sort of hourly rate that actually reflects the value that you're receiving, which is why we've sort of deferred to this success-based fee.
So does the Ridley agent get paid even if it doesn't
Regardless.
close? Okay. So it does, you are solving a problem for agents then, because they are getting.
We take upfront, we take an upfront fee on all plans to make sure that we can cover that.
Yeah, I think the challenge of you really have to change consumer behavior in many ways. And what I mean by that is that we get texts and phone calls after hours, on the weekends, all those types of things. And a consumer is communicating with us in a way that they're probably not communicating with their CPA or their attorney. They're texting us, they're emailing, they're calling us all times of the day. And when I look at, my transactions just for one seller this year, I've had over 900 text messages just from the seller, right?
That's insane.
It's insane, right? And so and I feel that I'm very focused on education, being upfront and giving them the resources too. I'm a pretty tech savvy agent as well. But it's the emotional labor, right? That is part of the transaction that is hard to quantify into just task-based jobs too.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some percentage of the consumer base that really wants that
hand-holding.
Yeah. And there's always going to be a role for agents to perform that. And yeah, I imagine it's quite challenging to figure out how to quantify, the value there. But I do think that technology is going to get to a place where 99% of those questions can be answered by a model that's trained on your complete knowledge base as an agent, your process, market data, everything. It's going to effectively be the same as talking to you, being able to sort of solicit that information. And I think that's going to work for some meaningful, this is a huge industry.
Yeah, there's room for everybody.
$55 trillion, I think, in total value in this industry. It is insane. And so there will be different models for different people, but I do think as a whole, the industry will move more towards there's never been a time in history where the technology has been what it is right now that has enabled the transaction to be technology. None of these companies, Homelist or Homey, all of these companies were great. They had the best intentions. They weren't software companies.
But I also would say the timing within the industry has never been more opportune for disruption, right? I was a big telling lots of agents about the lawsuit that was coming for years in advance. And that lawsuit really took away, when you remove the commission and the cooperation in the MLS, it really took away the MLS's power. And I also see, part of what you're talking about too is being able to promote this information is also using the MLS. But we know that there's a lot of disruption going on right now where the MLS may not be the MLS anymore. And the listings could be siloed within specific brokerages who are very keen on keeping things the old way too. And I don't think that's necessarily best for the consumer
either. No, I
either.
don't either. I don't think anyone has the consumer's best interest in mind.
No.
You can look at all of the big players in the industry, and I mean, just look at they say one thing and then the practice really promotes something different. Like I think this Compass move, is basically replacing one monopoly with another.
Yep.
If it's approved by the Department of Justice, like there's no world in which the consumer benefits from this.
Nope.
And Zillow really started out with the best of intentions. I think they learned the hard way that the industry, the lobby group, the trade group here has a tremendous amount of power. They're the single largest lobbying spender in the country. They spend over $70 million a year. And they were sort of forced into a model that, monetizes agents. And I think they've, had to do some deals to figure out how to, make their business viable. And now their whole business is on real estate agents. I think this whole thing that we saw with the lawsuit last week with the Zillow Flex agents is very interesting. I think, I'm sure you're familiar with that model.
I've written about that on LinkedIn for many months ago, just how the Zillow agents, they get some really great leads, but then they're also forced to push consumers in a way that may not benefit them. And so there's a huge, for me as an agent, it's a big values misalignment, and it does not feel great. But conversely, I think we demonize Zillow, right? I think parts of Zillow is not good, but there are also parts that the consumer likes Zillow.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And so we're trying to demonize this company for the benefit of other brokerages, which I think can be a bit challenging because you're trying to push the consumer in a different direction for your benefit as well.
I think this new lawsuit is interesting. I don't think the consumer recognizes that when they inquire about a listing on their property, on a property that they're interested in, that lead is being sold into their Flex program, and that it's almost guaranteeing that they'll have a higher commission because Zillow's taking 40%. The buyer agent has a lot less room to negotiate a buyer's agent, commission.
And a lot of times they get kind of a lower quality agent because the agents that's willing to give up 40% of their commission is somebody that doesn't have a robust business of their own.
It'll be interesting to see that lawsuit is at the heart of Zillow's business model. I mean, it may not go
Zillow
anywhere.
was successful with Premier Agent before that too, and I think pushing people into, it's the same thing from an agent. They're pushing them into Zillow Home Loans, and I think you could talk to more about the differences between Zillow Home Loans and Jess Uphoff and the service that she provides.
Yeah.
Part of it, it's value versus volume too, right? And it's the consumer experience and how they value their time, right? Some people will trade time for money, and other people need the money and will invest their time. And so it goes into what we talked about in the beginning, is that there are models available for everyone, but it hasn't necessarily taken off in one way or the other because of the regulations and the restrictions and just the sheer cost of doing business in this industry too.
Yeah.
And you do question who really has the consumer's best interest at heart, and
it's a fair question. I mean, it is a really challenging industry, to be able to innovate in. It's really hard to offer a low cost model. Historically, customer acquisition costs has always been the challenge for these businesses. I'd argue that it was actually a technology problem back then where they actually didn't have software navigating it, but it's hard. I mean, it's hard, but I also think that to your point, on your last comment there, there's this sort of technology differentiator that's happening right now that I think is massive and really drastically underappreciated in the industry. There are the regulatory tailwinds where, you know better than I do, but I don't think that lawsuit accomplished anything other than
attorneys making a bunch of money.
Attorneys made a bunch of money. I love it. Agents love to say that too. But I think what it did accomplish was two things. One, it pushed this conversation into the consumers, consumers were talking about this,
the
right?
forefront.
All of a sudden, there was this big lawsuit. Wasn't that supposed to change commissions? Commissions have been high. This is crazy. Home prices have doubled, in some places tripled over the last 5 years, and commissions are fixed to this asset class. So I think it's changed the conversation around consumer sentiment a fair amount. And that is why my account went viral. That's why Open Door is having this meme stock moment. There is this groundswell in shift in consumer sentiment. And then secondly, there are these all of these sort of downstream consequences of that lawsuit that are now materializing before our eyes, right? Like you've got all of the
MLS,
sort of, you've got the MLS stuff. You've got dozens of other lawsuits that are now pending in the wake of it. You also, under increased scrutiny from the Department of Justice, NAR has had to analyze a lot of these other competitive practices, like the no commingling rule, which they've now repealed. So for the first time in history, we're actually seeing like shifting, I think, in the sort of regulatory landscape. And so I do think it's a really interesting time. It's a scary time to be this because things are moving so fast. Like it's hard to keep up with it, but I do think it's one of the best times in history to be sort of investing in this space. And it's such an important issue. Like we can all agree on, we may like disagree on how it should be done and what's right and what's wrong, but we can all agree that this is a massively important problem for us to solve.
Yeah. One thing I'll point out though is like, I know the commission and the cost, right, is a big concern, but I would say when you're delivering high level service and value, the consumer wants to pay you and they want to make sure that they pay you what you're worth. And those are lots of conversations that I do have with my clients. Not every agent is delivering the same level of service, and should they be compensated at that same amount? No. But I think a lot of consumers do see how hard agents work for them and that they want to make sure that they're being taken care of too. Those are just conversations that I have had with consumers as well.
I think that, I always use this example. Maura Rodino, if you're listening, the first real estate agent that I ever hired, she drove my wife around and my wife and I around for like 40 hours trying to find our first home. She earned every single penny of her commission.
Yeah.
The reality is like not all transactions are like that. And not every instance is the same. Some homes sell themselves. I do argue, and I really believe this, that technology has made this process more efficient. And in every other industry, when technology makes a process more efficient, you see reductions in costs. And we haven't seen reductions in costs at all to the consumer. In fact, we've seen a drastic increase. Commissions have increased 0.4% since 2020. I mean, it sort of defies like the laws of economics that they continue to rise, even though home prices continue to rise. But yeah, I mean, I guess like I think that, I haven't met a consumer, or that's not entirely true. Like the vast majority of homeowners and people who are familiar with this process all feel like it's just too expensive. Like the value that they're receiving is not reflected in the cost that they're paying. And now I recognize that there's definitely other people who have had other experiences. Like I just mentioned, in my first time, but yeah, I think like, it just doesn't make any sense to me how the costs associated with this service have continued to rise, despite the fact that, technology has made things more efficient. The job hasn't gotten harder by any means. And
being a real estate agent hasn't gotten harder.
I would argue that it's gotten easier. I mean, there are more agents.
I don't know. I think I would disagree with that. I think the complexity of the deals today is pretty tough because you've just got all these variables that you're.
I mean, every single deal is challenging.
Do you mean from a competition perspective?
No, just from a
affordability, interest rate, pricing.
It's just more nuanced.
It's more. Yeah.
Well, are we speaking in this sort of higher interest rate environment, or are we?
I think that the higher interest rate is one aspect of it. I think that the inventory swings is another. I think the fact that our market is locked in with these really low rates that are keeping people from moving.
Yeah.
I think we have so many different things going on, these lawsuits around commission. So you take all these variables together. And I agree that commissions have gone up, but I think we're going to go through commission compression as rates go down. Yeah, like it's going to start pretty soon here. Like people are proud that they've kept their commission rates really high, but I think as rates start going down and buyer's agent commission becomes one of the parts of the negotiation, which it's not right now.
But how do you think it will become one? I mean,
because we're going to have more demand. Like as demand goes up, now we have 3 people writing an offer on the same house. Sure. Oh, you don't have to pay my agent, I'll pay her. Yep. Right? And now the other 2 have to drop their buyer's agent's commission to get the house. Yep. So I think that's how buyer's agent commission is going to get completely compressed down. We haven't gone through that yet because we've stayed at these high rates, but the complexity of the deals today is really hard.
Have you seen any buyers paying their own commission?
Oh yeah.
Have you experienced that?
Yeah.
Almost every single deal that I'm doing right now, I have
buyers are paying their own
part
commission.
of it. Yeah, because the industry standard has gone.
It's dropped here.
Yeah, from 2.8 to 2.5, and so it's up to the buyer's agent to have that conversation with their buyer and say,
if you want the deal,
right. Like basically you can pay this portion.
And that's where the complexity comes in, right? And so we're talking about Zillow Home Loans and, Jess Uphoff, and that's the value versus volume.
Sure.
And so you may be paying less for a loan over there, but are you getting the house that you want? Because you're not necessarily getting the strategy that you may be getting with those high volume servicers. And that's ultimately going to be the divide, right? The consumer's going to have this experience. They're going to run up against the wall, and they're ultimately going to potentially keep running up against that wall, or they're going to shift their strategy to getting better service and advice and insights too.
Yeah. But I think both can exist.
Yes.
And I think that's what I love about our conversation today is that there's the demographic of people that love Ridley are the people like your number one demographic, the people that are downsizing. They are in a position of life. They've done this before.
Sure.
They have some, like you said, some level of understanding of how it works.
Yep.
They have the time to invest to learn about how to do it themselves. I think it's great to give that demographic of people, but then there's other people that super busy professionals. They want to hire the best. They want to pay for Lauryn's time or pay for my time. And, so I think both can exist. And that brings me to my next question, because I think the number one thing why realtors hate you is how you show up online.
Sure.
And so why does it have to be so degrading of agents? I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, it's a fair question. I take the question. The truth is this process started from a place of frustration.
Yeah, totally.
I was pissed off.
Yeah.
I still kind of am pissed off.
Yeah.
And some of it's a little bit self-fulfilling. But I have a lot of issues with this industry, and but I also recognize that it's a system issue more than it is necessarily an individual agent issue. And look, I haven't gotten everything right. I have absolutely not gotten everything right through this process. I go back and look at some videos. I'm like, what the hell was I talking about? The truth is, guys, I am building the plane as I'm flying it.
Yeah.
This has been my sort of personality throughout my whole life. I've always, just jumped into things 100%. And, so anyhow, I've got a lot of issues with the industry. I've got a lot of issues with, how some agents behaved.
Yes.
I was attacked by agents.
Totally. We watched it in your comments.
I had agents going online, creating videos, lying about me before it got intense.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of origin of this whole thing. And look, we haven't started marketing the company. This has all been through this creator account, Realtors Hate Me. And I think you'll start to see once we, begin to market the company that the tone will shift. The fact is we are building for agents as well. And we are, trying to make this process more efficient for all stakeholders. So I think you'll start to see a shift in sort of the messaging, moving forward.
A couple of just thoughts I would share is that, it is dismaying to see how the industry responded, right? They felt under threat, and it was embarrassing, highly unprofessional. And that's number one part of the problem in this industry is that the standards are so low and there's no accountability. And that is something that
These were some of the highest agents in Front Range.
But still, right? There's what kind of accountability that happened as a result.
And I also, the funny thing is I took all those videos down just because I got private messages from a lot of them apologizing. But now when you go back, you don't see any of the context for how this whole thing came to be. But yeah, it was hardcore. It was hardcore for a period, but I'll take some responsibility for it. You're showing up here a lot differently than you show up online. And what I would share too is
if you look at the industry, you're right that the agent has been the one that's been marginalized a lot. They have been the ones suffering the consequences of higher level decisions and regulations and laws and all of that. And so they are getting squeezed just as the consumer is getting squeezed too. But when you look around, I think most of us, like, we fight hard for our clients, right? We work hard, we try to do the best for them. And there's not a lot of leadership in the industry for agents to grasp, and want to follow. And so that's where I do think there is opportunity when you shift the tone and you engage in these types of conversations and kind of can show how we're actually trying to help both the consumer and the agent. There's a massive opportunity out there.
I think the problem is there are so many real estate agents. Like, there are, I don't know the exact number. I know there's like 1.5 million realtors and there's like 3 million agents. There are more agents than there are homes for sale at any given point in time. And so that to me speaks to the fact that, like, the barrier to entry is really low.
Agreed.
Like, you say that all of the agents are like, all the agents are working hard. Like, that's because you're in a small group of agents that are like great.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of agents don't, we talked about, 70% plus haven't sold a home. Like, so yeah, I mean, that's a problem for the industry.
But this is an opportunity for you.
It's an opportunity for sure.
The opportunity for you is to find those really good agents and partner with those really good agents to deliver a really good consumer experience. But by partnering with lower agents who aren't necessarily showing.
Totally. We learned that the hard way in the early days.
I'm sure you did, right? Yeah. But that's what I'm just saying. Like, there's an opportunity to up-level everybody here with what you're building as well.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Yeah.
So what's next for Ridley?
So we are aggressively trying to finish the consumer product. So like we launched this thing in July. We a lot of it was put together with duct tape and baling wire. Like we're trying to move fast at the pace of things. So we are aggressively trying to finish this, this consumer experience. Like, this is a very long process. So there's all these different products within it that need to be built. Our intention is to launch our base offering in at least 40 states by the end of the year. So giving people access to that sort of do-it-yourself experience, and then sort of use the data from that launch to determine which states to go and launch our agent networks in. We've got some really interesting partnerships that we'll be announcing, over the coming weeks. And we are also just a few weeks away from launching like our first sort of buyer experience as well. So we are just building. We're just head down building, which is why it was so hard to schedule this podcast.
Yeah.
We have been, in the weeds. We're a very small team.
How many people are on the team right now?
Full-time, there's only 3 of us.
Oh,
but
wow.
We have contractors, we have contract engineers and contract designers and advisors and, but yeah, it's a very, very small team. Yeah.
I love that.
And
anything with lending or
eventually.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, you think of like, one of the reasons why you can offer a very low cost or even free service in some of these cases when you're using technology is like the contribution margins are incredibly high because it's software, right? Like it's, but then there's all these other downstream opportunities to sort of, monetize on the transaction. Like you've got all of the referrals for, photographers and stagers and home inspectors and, all of that. We have that built into the platform where you can simply, schedule top vendors in your area. You've got, opportunities in title. You've got opportunities in mortgage. We've generated, this is like a really interesting thing to speak to, like the demand generation for this, over $2 billion in lead volume, seller lead volume since the end of May. And
that's wild. Just
like in case anyone had any questions about our intentions, we cross-referenced the MLS to determine what percentage went on to list with an agent. $900 million worth of those properties went on to list with an agent. These are very high intent sellers, right? If we just wanted to turn on monetization tomorrow and monetize and sell these leads like Zillow does and monetize them, that represents over $12 million in unrealized referral revenue, assuming 100% close. I mean, obviously not 100% of those are going to close. So, we are trying to do this right. Like we are truly trying to do this right and develop a consumer first platform that works for everyone. And so, yeah, we've got our work cut out for us, but
yeah.
Oh, good timing.
So how do people get in touch with you that have nice things to say to you?
Well, you found me in the DMs.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I mean, you can reach out to me on Instagram. You can reach out on the Get Ridley Instagram account.
Okay.
And you'll start to see some more content coming from there soon.
Is that going to become the primary account?
We haven't decided what we're going to do.
Okay.
You know, I don't want to sound like I'm sort of backtracking from my like issues with the industry, because they are real.
Yeah.
But, you know, we haven't sort of decided what we're going to do, but it's likely that I just from a bandwidth perspective can't be sitting on Instagram anymore. Like, honestly, it's like, it got really toxic there for a while.
It did.
Why don't we just change the name to Regulators Hate Me?
The industry, no, the system.
The system. Yeah, because you like realtors now, right? You're starting to
work with them. We work with them every day.
And you're starting to understand that the whole system's broken, right? That
it is a system-wide issue for sure.
Yeah. So we'll change it to the system.
We'll work on that. We'll workshop that.
Thank you for being here. We really
so
appreciate your time. It was fun to learn about what you're doing.
Yeah, grateful to you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.